Okay, hello everybody, and we're back with Leo Lyon Zagami, my good friend, and I figure it's a good time to have an opportunity to share some of the new insights that he's included in the revised edition of his book, Volume 5 of Confessions of Illuminati. Here happens to be Volume 2, with his nice rings on and everything. Hi, Leo. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Actually, Volume 2, for some strange reason, was banned from all the prisons of the state of Arizona. There was actually a legal action taken last year. We don't know why, but I mean, the prison inmates are not allowed to read that book. Aside from that, there was the Brotherhood of Satan that tried to get it out of commerce, which meant that actually after this edition, they're probably gonna omit some of the pages which mention the Brotherhood of Satan, even if the actual things that I said about them were completely true and they actually had plenty of evidence. But unfortunately, I mean, publishers at times get a little bit wary of having legal actions against them. So definitely Volume 2, it's a book with a lot of importance, because if you go and read in between the details, it says that the virus will come in the year 2020. It actually says in that book. So
yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
Prophetic in a way. But Volume 5, yes, the new edition of Volume 5, which I just brought out, is this one, which has 140 pages dedicated to the Wuhan virus, and it's actually has a new cover, and in the new cover, you can see the mask that the Statue of Liberty has is actually a dragon, and so it's kind of symbolic. And right at this moment of time in which this big growing confrontation with China, I analyzed a lot of the insides and also the long history of biological warfare that was built by China in response to what happened during the Second World War with Japan. And so I just went into all that, and I also went into the history of how they also gradually got accepted by the global community regarding their presence, even at the medical level, also with the World Health Organization since the 90s, when the US and, of course, Bill Clinton treaties regarding their stand with biological warfare, of course, officially stating they have nothing to do with it, while instead they have repeatedly violated what were the prerogatives of these treaties. So I think that everybody is, of course, conscious of what China's role is in this moment of history. But thank you for having me on, John, today on your show, on your new channel that you are launching, and I hope that it will grow very much in the following months and years.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's not really a new channel. It's just a channel that I've had for quite a while that I haven't really added much to over time. Most of the content that I had been presenting over the last few years up until recently was interviews, conversations that I would do with Douglas Gabriel, my best buddy over at American Intelligence Media, over there with his wife, Tyler Gabriel. And we've been doing all kinds of mining.
How is the American Intelligence Media project going?
It just goes on and on. I mean, there's never a dull moment. I mean, it's like many people say, seems as though there's more things that happen in one day than used to happen in a month. So it's like, I feel like I live in a wind tunnel just trying to keep up with all this craziness. There's so many legs to the octopus.
Yeah, in fact, these days we have to really focus on the main episodes, maybe because, like you said, on a daily basis, there's so many side things going on one topic or the other. But regarding the main topics of importance, I would say that recently, probably the removal of the Hagia Sophia museum from being this museum since 1934 to becoming again a mosque has been probably in the last few days the most important episode that has happened, and that has, of course, astonished a lot of people, because there was initially no answer, no reply from the Vatican. And when the Vatican replied, suddenly the Pope actually kind of marched in favor of the Christians with his, he paved the way for a Christian reaction. But in reality, it's a complete theatrics by the usual Jesuit Pope Francis that has been working for years behind the scenes, really, in regards to creating a one-world religion. And I think that the Hagia Sophia, the Saint Sophia cathedral that was inaugurated in the 6th century, and then went on for all the Byzantine period, and then became eventually a mosque after 1,000 years, but for 400 years, constitutes a very particular reality of holy ground used by these two faiths that now we the Jesuits are trying to find a form of integration for what we have announced a long time ago on leozagami.com, which is Chrislam. So it's no surprise here that the Pope has reacted that way, mainly because he didn't want to upset his Orthodox allies, in particular Bartolomeo, Patriarch. But apart from not upsetting, that is just the theatrics of it, because in reality, when you go and study the words of Prime Minister Erdogan, you realize that Erdogan is, of course, very close to Pope Francis. He was even given an award in 2018. Pope Francis himself in 2014 went to Istanbul and prayed with an imam in this place. So he kind of prepared, he has been very much willing to push in the direction of using this structure to integrate these two faiths, and possibly even in the future other faiths, because Erdogan has said he's going to be open to worship to people of all faiths. So it's really like this one world religion is creeping in. And in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, especially in the month of May, I wrote a couple of articles that are published on leozagami.com regarding the fact that he canceled certain things, but he still continued to dedicate himself to this project, which is this human fraternity document that he has created with his allies in the United Arab Emirates. And then he went to Asia, and he brought this document also to the Buddhists in Thailand, and he's trying to gather momentum with the support of some rabbis, with support of people from various faiths, because we continue from that moment in which we discussed a long time ago, me and you, John Paul II, which you met, did that famous meeting in Assisi, and from there on...
You've frozen up a little bit here. I don't know if it is in the stream or not. So I don't know if I should talk over you. Well, your feed is frozen, as has the sound. So in any event, yeah, it's very, very troubling the way these things are going. The Hagia Sophia has a great history. It's one of the most remarkable buildings. At one time, it was the largest building of its type in the world. And so consequently, it really is one of the signposts of Christendom. We lost Leo there. I think he's going to have to re-enter somehow, but that's okay. I'll continue on. Here he is.
Yes, we seem to have sometimes some problems technically, but...
yeah, I was just sharing some of the history of Hagia Sophia and Constantinople, the city of Constantine, Emperor Constantine.
Absolutely.
Vino Vidi Vici's in the sign Conquer, it's like...
And also the country where they actually did the Council of Nicaea, because people maybe don't know that, but it was critical to actually move forward with the Christian religion acceptance as the faith of the empire, no? The religion of the empire.
And you also have to consider the island of Patmos is really part of Turkey.
In a way, I would say that the Greeks were kind of dissent on that one, but I guess that they are positioned on two sides of Cyprus, trying to still understand who...
Asia Minor is definitely one of the problem areas. It's about as non-problematical as Vietnam. It's interesting because if you get into the history of the split between the empire in the east, centered in Constantinople, and the empire in the west, back in the time of Charlemagne in the 8th century, in the 9th century. And it's interesting because it was the emperor, they called him Michael the Stammerer. And it was on his direction that a great many of the important Greek documents, including the writings on angelology by Dionysius, are put in the name of Dionysus, or sometimes referred to as pseudo-Dionysius, which gives the 9 hierarchies of the angelic beings. And that became a central core of Christian culture.
That was then put again by Thomas Aquinas when he did this Summa Theologiae. He kind of brought back into the equation that.
Because the writings of Dionysius the Areopagite were the second most referenced documents in the Summa Theologica.
What I think is here from this decision is the fact that we have seen Recep Erdogan in the first years of his coming into power, aligning with the Gulen movement. Then the Gulen movement of Fethullah Gulen, who actually resides here in the US, protected mainly by the Clinton Foundation. He was instrumental in bringing him into power, Erdogan. But then they had a conflict. There was a conflict, internal conflict. And as you know, there was just a few years ago an attempted coup by the Fethullah Gulen movement, who attempted a coup against Erdogan. They failed this coup. Erdogan reclaimed his power, and not only that, he persecuted methodically all the members of the Gulen movement. He arrested them and made sure that they will not infiltrate anymore the educational system, the military, the economic system. But still, I mean, Gulen is a very powerful figure. However, Erdogan is still aiming for a similar kind of Ottoman Empire kind of revival. That is what has been going on really in Turkey. I think that the Ottoman Empire revival, though in a way conflicts though with Kemal Atatürk's foundation message, which was clear also in transforming this cathedral in a museum to avoid any possible conflicts.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because, Ataturk, his whole history in westernizing Turkey and really making it one of the modern nations, but consequently there are ties to Sabbatai and Francus within.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There is those who say he was himself a dome, as they say in Turkey, Sabbatai and Frankist, and he was connected to the island of Salonico. In the islands of Salonico, he became a Freemason. He was connected to certain families who were Sabbatai and Frankist. And let's not forget the connection of these families also with Rudolf von Bottendorf, founder of the Thule Gesellschaft, which is also critical in the foundation of the future National Social, which is basically the Nazi party in Germany, and of course the rise to power of Adolf Hitler, that was for some helped by these rituals of ancient Turkish Freemasonry, which were in some way discovered and then published by Rudolf Ossendorff, have nothing to do with the traditional forms of Freemasonry that we know today, but they were a constant use of the Quran to create a sort of connection with your higher self and also with certain forces. So it's also interesting in that connection that we have with the Salonico. And of course, the Sabbatean Frankists are, I think, instrumental in launching everything in the realm of sexual magic that we know about. Because if we really go to the roots of sexual magic, Pascal Beverly Randolph, the Theosophical Society used to then launch the Ordo Templi Orientis, and then in the specifics we have the rise of Aleister Crowley. I would say that the links are many with the Sabbatean Frankist element.
Well, it's a bit of a stretch to say that the Theosophical Society launched.
No, it's not a stretch.
It's out of that milieu.
No, I would say no. I block you there, because Madame Blavatsky is said to be a disciple of the Brotherhood of Luxor. The Brotherhood of Luxor is said to be Sabbatean Frankist, so it's no stretch there. We're talking about a disciple of the founder of the Brotherhood of Luxor.
Yeah, there's different strains of that stream, and that's where the confusion begins, because when you get even Sabotendorf, who was like a kind of a mentor for an inner core of the SS regarding the relationship to Freemasonry and all of that, when he saw where things were going, he left.
Well, of course, but he does the anthroposophical thing. Of course, that was the moment in which he realized it. But if we go, some people, of course, dispute whether Max Theon, the founder of the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, was or not Blavatsky's mentor. But apparently there is plenty of evidence that it circulates that she was connected to Max Theon, and Max Theon in turn was a Sabbatean Frankist. And there is also other connection with the Sabbatean Frankist. The founder of the Golden Rose Cross, which was also an avant-post for the Jesuits, used to spread certain elements of the Sabbatean creed, and of course helped the Frankists, because when we say Frankist, we have to talk about Jacob Frank. When we talk about Sabbatean, we talk about Sabbatai Zevi. There is a century in between these two incarnations that they will develop the same creed. So, but they are both connected. If we go in a deeper research, and I did it in my book, Volume 4, this one here, I dedicated a whole chapter into explaining how there is a disconnection, and the evidence that we have that Madame Blavatsky was connected to the Brotherhood of Luxor is quite known, but up until now was very difficult to research. What's your take on the Brotherhood of Luxor?
Definitely, she was in contact with the Brotherhood of Luxor, but it's easy to misunderstand Blavatsky because she was in touch with pretty much everybody. I mean, she went all over the place. And so, and then to say that somebody was able to kind of rein her in and make her their minion, that's the trouble she got into with the British lodges and then later with the American lodges, is that she wouldn't go along with how they wanted to direct her narrative. And consequently, it's said by C.G. Harrison, who got it from Lawrence Oliphant, that she was put in astral prison, meaning that prevented her from accessing certain realms within the astral world until she was freed from that by the initiates that she knew from India. And then you see Theosophy taking a strong turn to the east, and the Secret Doctrine coming out in 1888. So, but to say that Blavatsky herself is a Sabbatean Frankist, I would say no, that's a stretch. I would say that she's very eclectic, and that she was familiar with a wide scope of literature, which was what was so remarkable about her books at that time, anyways. Today's going to be a little shorter than our usual podcast because it's like 10 to the hour, and Leo told me he could share with us for an hour.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm working on a bunch of books here, which I hope to bring out, and so time flies when you are actually.
I don't want to get to the end, and you haven't given people enough information to go research your work further, because I think it's critically important that people understand the various power bases, meaning like.
Well, one thing for sure regarding Madame Blavatsky is that even if not directly, Crowley referred to Blavatsky, who was, by the way, founded the Theosophical Society the year that Crowley was born, because Crowley used the Theosophical Society and all the representatives in the world of the Theosophical Society to spread his own philosophy of Thelema, his own.
There's no question about that, of course.
And of course, when it comes down to the Sabbatean Flankist Creed, going back to that, as I said, it's of course a very complex matter. But when it comes down to Max Theon, there is actually there is K. Paul Johnson who speculated. I remember in the Masters Review that there was actually an adept based on Theon. And so Blavatsky had really a direct, let's say, a direct link to this important initiatic school, which was referred to also by Aleister Crowley. I mean, a lot of people refer to the Brotherhood of Luxor in that moment in history. Why do you think that?
Well, because if that's what you were doing, if you were into Hermetic studies, if you were into Egypt, were you to travel to the region, there were members that were associated with it throughout the Levant, throughout in Palestine and in Egypt and Syria and in Lebanon. It was really one of the few movements of that type at that time. And so consequently,
But there is also, I think, one link that probably more than any other gives us that is the link with the Pascal Beverly Randolph, which is really an icon of the sexual magical scene.
Well, that's the difficulty I've had. Like I go on Rosicrucian groups, say on Facebook, and if I start any kind of Christian narrative, I get people jumping all over me. There's all these Crowleyites over there. It's like, see, Crowley, what he has done is he's taken many things that are good and noble, and he has claimed them as a part of what his school is, and that he represents that which he does not. And so consequently, although he had associated with things, for example, of a Rosicrucian striving, he like the Jesuits, they seem to infiltrate and then twist it to their own ends. And so consequently, you'll get that. And Pascal Beverly Randolph was a very unusual character, and he came in contact with certain sexual practices called karezza in the Middle East, for example, and that, which is so obscure you hardly ever see that mentioned.
Well, I mean, Crowley after picks it up, the practice, of course, and he makes a whole thing about it because he was very much into that kind of masturbation, both, I guess, with the body and with the mind.
Well, because see, in initiation, there's two fundamental poles. There's the vital pole, which is coming up, raising the Kundalini, coming up from the lower chakras. And then there's the consciousness pole, like in the work of Rudolf Steiner, where you take thinking as a free process to develop your spiritual capacities and freedom. That he says that the lower chakras were things that you've already worked on in previous incarnations, and now what's needed is to work on from the heart up. And that's the Grail mystery. That is the Rosicrucian Grail stream, the consciousess pole.
I find that Pascal Beverly Randolph interesting because of his African American. Of course, he was African American, and also because he was indicated by Edward White as establishing the first Rosicrucian order in the United States. Now, I don't really think that is correct, but that's what.
That's what they say. And again, there's a big difference between what I consider true Rosicrucianism, that it is an initiatory society that's been given that name because of the Rosicrucian documents. And these organizations that are kind of like Freemasonry, they're clubs and they have membership and all that. They have symbolism that they carry within them that is derived from certain related sources to Rosicrucianism and Masonry and all of that. But are we talking about the same thing? No, I don't think we are. I don't think the true Rosicrucian order is some kind of club that you can join. It's something that if you develop your capacities to the point, then they'll find you. Don't worry about it. Just work on yourself. Try to be a good Christian. Follow your heart. Learn to think clearly. Learn to think complete thoughts so that you don't fall into the truncated thinking of materialism, to where they're always looking for closure and they want to find the answer. Increase the capacity of your questions. That's what the quest is. The Knight of the Grail is on a quest. It's a question.
Well, some people consider the first Rosicrucian and in what was becoming the United States, Thomas Paine, who also had a very important role in the very foundation of the United States.
Yeah, well, he's a deist, which is very problematic, and accepting deism was part of what was the downfall of the Grand Lodge of France, actually. Well,
downfall for those people, of course, like us, who think as Freemasonry as something that was originally crafted and created as Christian. For them, it was an achievement, and actually still is, because it seems like not only they have taken over from 1877 with the schism of the Grand Orient of France, progressive Freemasonry, but now they have taken over even regular Freemasonry, who seems to have given their soul to these progressive forces. John, the situation now with Freemasonry in the US since the destruction, removal, and burning of the statue of Albert Pike is completely clear to everybody, I think. I mean, this fraternity not only doesn't control the world, but it's been infiltrated, used, and now self-destructed because they want to eliminate it. And now they have actually managed that, because here in California, from last week, 45,000 people, members of the Grand Lodge of California, only 5,000 have paid their yearly dues. That meant the closure of the bank account, a big problem for the Grand Lodge of California. But I mean, when you go and see what kind of post the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of California makes, or the past Grand Master, even worse, who makes anti-Trump posts and libtarded mentality that is promoted in their lodges, I go there and I hear.
That's a total violation of the principles of the lodge, because a lodge is a place where you don't discuss religion or politics. Period.
Well, it's kind of like now works like you can't discuss politics if it is if you are a conservative, but if you are left wing, you can discuss anything, because that is really accepted. And on top of that, there is.
Don't you think a lot of that is centered in Colorado, though? You think that
that's... No. Here in California, we have a big problem. At the moment, the problem actually is even bigger than Colorado, because here it seems like the Freemasons are actually starting to realize this. And the fact that only 5,000 have paid, it's also because of a decision that the Grand Master has done, which is basically to hold their meetings on Zoom until they find a vaccine, which is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I don't know what to tell you. I think that at this stage of the game, everybody has to do what they can to try and preserve the Constitution of the Republic. And the strongest power in the universe is the individual, as I've always said. And don't try to come to conclusions too quickly, because you probably are working on incomplete information. And I always assume that I don't have all the information, so I'm very cautious about accepting developed concepts leading to conclusions. It's too hard today to trust conclusions. It's like, Ghislaine Maxwell, has she really been arrested? I don't know. I haven't seen any mug shots or any official document.
Well, officially, she's been arrested, and she's also has been refused bail because they want to give this image that she's.
I saw that, but I get people coming at me saying they can't find official documents regarding her arrest. If somebody has them, I'd love to see them. I haven't seen them as of yet. So
I think that what's happening.
I don't know.
Sure, no, but I think that in the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, I think that she has enough material to leverage her position.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, she's probably there discussing, she wanted to actually go immediately to a suite in a grand hotel in New York, but that was refused. Now let's see what we find. I think that the fact that Trump is our president has put us in the position to have Ghislaine Maxwell arrested. I think that if Obama was the president, she would be still there, free, in her new mansion, wherever she was.
With Jeffrey Epstein.
And then you have also Harvey Weinstein. Then you have all these people. They are all part of the Libertard Democratic Party. They actually financed it with money. So, I mean,
Well, it's even bigger than the Democrats, though, because there's a lot of Republicans that are, and that's part of the problem, is this duopoly of the Republicans that are just opportunists, or they're corrupted. Or
I think when you talk Republicans of the past, you talk about Republicans that have betrayed their own conservative view, especially in states like California. This is quite obvious in the local GOP. I mean, here we are seeing people that for years, watch Schwarzenegger. I mean, wasn't Arnold Schwarzenegger supposed to be a Republican?
Yeah, what's up with him?
I mean, the guy is hanging out with Greta Thunberg. So, I mean, and you have then a lot of other, but you see, now we are starting to see a change in the GOP, a change in people representing the Republican Party, mainly because of Donald J. Trump. So we hope that he stays in power so we can see a complete renewal of the Republican Party in the coming 4 years.
Well, like Tyler texted me this morning, she said, kabuki, it's theater. And so yesterday somebody said to me that they have faith in President Trump. I said, I wouldn't go that far. I would say I have hope, because he gets a lot of things right, more things right than anybody that I can remember. But he's still got certain things he needs to figure out regarding 5G and all that.
No, but I mean, he has already figured out that. But I mean, he has already figured out that 5G is a technology that needs to be kept out of the control of the Chinese, and that is already something.
That's just an incremental change.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to the health issues related to 5G, that is still to be investigated further. But I mean,
they even stated in Congress that they hadn't really done any tests on the safety of it. So that being said, how in the world could they come to the conclusion that, okay, let's roll it out because we need it to run our stuff? Meanwhile, turns out it gets all screwed up by trees, and if there's too much humidity in the air. So
the fact that Great Britain has now postponed the rolling out of 5G because of the cancellation of Huawei, I think it's like the cancellation of Huawei gives us the possibility to actually in the countries which have renounced to this Chinese intrusion, to actually reinvestigate the whole technology and see what are the pros and cons of it. I mean,
well, beyond that, like for example, the president of Ghana in Africa, he just came out against Bill Gates, and he's like totally throwing that whole Bill and Melinda Gates initiative out of Ghana, and he's been putting out expose. I haven't had a chance to read the thing yet. I don't read his language, but I'm sure somebody's going to translate it. I'll be able to get a more in-depth look at it. But the word's getting out. And mind you, President Trump tends to do the right thing once he's given the information.
Yeah, but
a bunch of people that are shielding him from getting him the right information.
Yeah. But I mean, as Trump and is the only last hope we have, because if he fails, even the Republican Party will go the other way. I mean, I already saw, I think, a member of the GOP who is a kind of anti-Trump. I'm not talking about Mitt Romney, because he is like talking like a Democrat these days. So I don't even consider it. But there was another guy the other day who went on one of these libtard channels, and he was like already preparing and saying, well, if it fails, we're going to bring the Republican Party on other lines. And the lines he was bringing them were the lines of basically the Democrat Party and the lines of globalism.
Yeah.
And so it's not about the party, but it's about the president being a billionaire who can still hold ground and maybe transform this party into something completely different and better for the future. But
because he had his own money, they can't control him.
That is the first thing that I immediately pointed out when I met with Alex Jones in 2015, and we decided for this unconditional support of Trump. And it was on the basis of the fact that he was very difficult to control, because you can't, Obama, I give you 80 million, 60 million, you a little book contract, a Netflix deal, I buy you out, you, your family, and the whole thing. And then him and Michelle, and these people are giving a bad name to the black people, they're giving a bad name to the black race. And they should be really blacklisted, in the sense that they are really ruining for a lot of black people the image, I think, of the race, because it's the image of a person who gets elected as the first African American and becomes a useful household, and I don't want to say the name.
Yeah. Well, consequently, and if you look at it, it's just so shadowy. There's so many questions about that man that have yet to be
absolutely
answered. So that you almost don't want to go there, because it gets ridiculous after a point. One thing we could say for sure, he was a CIA operative, and that he had been handled for a long time. And all you have to do is look at when he first came into the presidency, he lets Citigroup decide, and the bankers decide who his cabinet was going to be. They just said, here's a list. He said, okay, fine. I mean, what does that tell you? He's not a populist president. He's just a spokesperson for the banking cartels. It's like
a tool of the system, and unfortunately, and I hope in the future we can have a black Republican president in the Republican Party of Donald J. Trump, because even after Trump will, of course, have to give up. He will not be able to, go along with the third mandate, because that's impossible. There is the possibility, of course, of his son. There is the possibility of making a dynasty party, which I don't know how good will that be. But of course, a dynasty party of Trump's is still better than anything that comes out of the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obama. If I had to choose between Michelle Obama and Ivanka Trump, I will, of course, choose Ivanka Trump. Also because Michelle Obama might not really be...
even though Ivanka's, she's... I'm sorry, but she's like Upper East Side Democrat.
I was making an example. Yeah, I think that actually Donald Trump has some very good sons who are actually
Donald Jr.
Capable of taking really and going forward with his, let's say, the change of the Republican Party is very important. And this morning I was reading articles that attacked the new GOP members, saying that they were QAnon fanatics, saying, wow, we have QAnon fanatics now getting into the Congress. Which I actually, I'm not, as you know, a fan of QAnon, but still I think at least these are people who are trying to answer some questions.
Yeah. That's the way I look at it. They have value because at least they're digging, although a lot of times what they end up with is these belief systems that they have, like trust sessions. How well did that work out? I'm sorry, but I never really trusted Sessions after the first
Well,
2 weeks.
of course, of course. Well, these are people who are kind of like very close to the old establishment, the old swamp, which is still there, really. Old or new is still there, the swamp. I mean, it's very difficult to drain, and I think it will take 4 more years to drain it completely. I mean, so that is really where we need to get. We need to get to a position in which we can drain the swamp in the next 4 years, and that will be the remaining of the swamp.
Well, again, going back to podcasts that Douglas Gabriel over at American Intelligence Media and I did when President Trump is first elected, and I made the point there's a lot that President Trump would like to do that he would never be able to get to until a second term, because he would have to be able to not worry about getting into arguments about reelection and all of that. And so consequently, if we can just prevent voter suppression through this COVID dilemma, I'll call it, pandemic, what have you, or the computerized voting machines that are corrupted that a 13-year-old can hack in 15 minutes, or dead people voting, or ballots disappearing, or ballots showing up in the trunks of cars. I mean, there's so many levels of corruption that the conservatives of America are going to have to participate in our constitutional republic. They need to be observers in vote counting. There's a lot of assignments that need to be filled to protect what we're doing here, or it's all over.
It's all over, or it's the beginning of an American tragedy, of a possibility that is unprecedented of civil unrest and war. Though, I mean, the possibility of civil unrest and war might even be unleashed if Trump gets elected, because you see, between September and November, these people will unleash hell on earth to not have Trump elected. That includes of course, second waves of COVID-19 or whatever. It will include Antifa attacks that will become really unbearable, because I would say that what we have seen after George Floyd was a warm-up. I would say that what we have seen after George Floyd is also a valve, kind of like you have a lot of tension building, and you need to, you have a valve and you need to open it a little bit to get a little bit of pressure out. And I think that they have used this tragedy to experiment what will come next, which is an attack on our American way of life from a group of people that I wish I will never see here in the US. I see them for years in Europe, these squatters, anarchists, Antifas, Black Lives Matter. For me, they're all part of the same George Soros financed bunch of mercenaries. And so the moment in which we will go towards the election, you will see them unleashed with a violence that is unprecedented. So for that reason, the moment in which these people will be unleashed, before and probably after the election of Donald J. Trump, well, if they push, then in the end, of course, you see, the thing is, Clinton, Pelosi, and all these people, they don't have a future if Trump gets reelected, and so they will unleash hell on earth. That means the reaction from the patriots, which then will bring us inevitably to civil war. And so I think that the American way of life can continue in certain states. In others is completely under attack. But we have seen, after Newsom has now got back to this new lockdown, closing again restaurants, bars, and everything else, people are starting to get really pissed off. Even the libtards are starting to realize that their life is at stake. So maybe this is great that Governor Newsom does everything possible to sabotage himself and the image of the Democratic Party.
Well, he gets carried away, just as they all do. I mean, if we've discussed this before in the many podcasts we've done together, come on, Gavin Newsom, he's tied in with Carnegie Foundation and with Nancy Pelosi with her mob ties, and I mean Jerry Brown, who was going to be a Jesuit priest, and then he didn't, and that whole group is so interlocked, and they've really messed it. I love California. I've been out there maybe 25, 30 times in the last 25 years or so. I love it.
Well, there is a big responsibility. There is a big responsibility by the Italo-American community, because Pelosi, Cuomo, De Blasio, and I can carry on and go on for ages, but they're all Italo-Americans. And for me, to become now Italo-American is a responsibility to bring back the good name. The fact that the Orders of the Sun of Italo-Americans and the Knights of Columbus have not released one shred of a decent statement regarding what has happened to the statues of Columbus, well, I don't care what Black Lives Matter. Italian lives matter first, also because we were persecuted just as much as the blacks when we came in this country. And so I don't give a damn. I say Italian lives matter. Then if a Black Lives Matter comes on me with a gun like they did with a poor lady, well, I'm a Sicilian. It's at their own risk and peril. Because at this point, I think that Italian Americans should take the risk to grow some balls and to move and wage war against these people like Nancy Pelosi. She is a mafiosi, so
she needs to be voted out, and it's a question of, can you have honest elections? But
it's not about voting out. This is people that have to be rooted out of their communities. I mean, this is a people that when go to Brooklyn, they are welcome with all the thing and the march and the parade. And I mean,
I know it's bad. I don't know what to tell you, because it's like the Italian Americans have contributed so immensely to the development of the United States.
It's a little bit like people, when they saw the statue of Albert Pike or other statues, they thought, of course, of the statue. But they don't know that statue was built by an Italo-American, a guy from Florence, who was a Freemason, who the Supreme Council, who actually was, that place was the headquarters of the first Supreme Council. That's why they marked with a statue and with that symbol of the ancient Celtic Scottish Rite, with that, because it's two statues actually. There was one of Pike, and then there is a minor statue that was under with showing the symbols of the Scottish Rite, and they were built by an Italian. And so I mean, the problem with this Black Lives Matter movement is that actually it's ruining the causes of Black people and the image of Black people.
Well, I not for me. I mean, because I see it for what it is. It's fake. I mean, it's like, come on. When you look at the leadership of that, they're straight up. You got people that are straight up convicted of crimes. Communists, they're receiving money. It's a clandestine operation. It's not an organic movement that developed out of the dissatisfaction of the community. It's something it's like the color revolutions that George Soros has funded all over the place. And the things that happened in the Middle East during Obama, it's like, I'm sorry, this is fabricated.
Christy, there is Rambo who is snoring. I have my dog is snoring.
Well, I guess maybe not that interesting.
Little dog is snoring. I guess that we have. Hey, Rambo. No, I woke him up. That's it.
But so consequently, God, there's so many things that we could talk about. We haven't talked in a long time.
Yes,
I'm enjoying this, but I again want to do a little bit of sharing with people. Here's my main book, The Arcana of the Grail Angel.
An excellent piece of work, very detailed, very, I mean, it takes a long time to write a book like that. It's definitely a work of passion, especially with those kind of topics, because you're not bringing, it's not like you're writing something that will bring you economic or I don't know what kind of
recognition. I'll never get rich writing this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you can see this as the Entered Apprentice volume. This is, if you could start here, it will give you the keys to interpret and unlock the signs and symbols of initiation and some of the key figures.
Well, I mean, it's like initiation. It's a great procedure, but you can also suffer from counter-initiation. I think that Freemasonry at this present stage is suffering from counter-initiation. I mean, when I wrote an article and I published a statement that was made by the Sovereign Grand Commander, the Sovereign Commander of the Ancient Set of Scottish Rite for the Southern Jurisdiction, about what has happened to Albert Pike, and he was kind of like, oh, well, if it helps repacificate people, let it be, all great, all good. That is, this is really why Freemasonry is dying. And I actually think the problem with the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite is that it was kind of built after the convent of Wilhelmsbad. And then it was built after the crisis of the House of Stuart, which meant the end of a cause. And then it became the possibility for Freemasons to open to a more universal approach. Let's remember that when the Ancient Scottish Rite started, the ancient and the moderns had not yet repacificated with each other, because it was only in 1813 that the Duke of Sussex will bring together these two warring factions. So, and then later on we have Albert Pike as the great reformer. Now, Albert Pike, there's a lot of criticism about this figure, because of course he was a Confederate general, because some say he was involved also with the early days of the KKK. Like many other Confederate generals, he probably joined after the war because, but what I think is that we need to understand that we can't tear down statues simply because of our own idea. It's a little bit like you said earlier on in the show. If we don't really know something for sure, we don't have, how can we? And then plus, there is also another thing. If we start tearing down the statues of all the people who murdered somebody or who conquered, I mean, every single statue is made of soldiers who have fought wars to fight for the sovereignty of their countries. Without their wars, without their murders, and without their brutal actions, as brutal as they can be, there will not be that sovereignty. The problem, I think, today, John, is that the realization for many of these libtards that sovereignty is built with blood. They don't realize that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's like Rudolf Steiner used to do a lot of lectures, and he would do lectures at the Socialist Workers Group, and he found he could talk about anything as long as he didn't talk about freedom. Then they get all upset, Okay, so they don't like freedom because really socialists the left has nothing really to offer, and if they let you run your mouth off, you're going to expose that they have nothing really to offer, and that if you go down that so-called rosy path, you'll end up like Venezuela, and they don't want you to know that. Heaven forbid.
I think that what happened here is that Albert Pike was pretty anti-Catholic, okay? And then we have, though, a lot of Jesuits who were also involved in some of the work in the early stages of the crafting of what became the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite. So then later on, we have a situation here in which one of the main teachings of this rite is the universality. So the universal approach. We don't recognize, it says, I think in the 32nd degree, any religion, as our own. But so it's like the libtards have found their ideal ground in this rite, because it teaches from the 30 to the 33rd degree the actual basis of Knights Templarism, and so which should be Christian, by the way, because the Templars were Catholic. Yeah, you can say some were Gnostic, but they were still Christian. And then instead, this whole thing brought us to this universal approach. And when you say universal, you open a can of worms made also of syncretism. religious syncretism, and that is also paving the way for the one world religion.
Chevalier Ramsay.
Absolutely, and that is the guy who started it all with his speech. And of course, when he was talking about the Knights Templar, but he was also talking from a Catholic perspective, because he was the tutor of Borny Prince Charles. So here we are really, it seems to me that the Master Mason of the Crown of Scotland and their words. Great. I mean, these are great works that a lot of people should study more. No, it seems to me that I've been speaking with a lot of Freemasons disappointed about the present state of the craft, that Freemasonry is just but a victim, like many others, of this Illuminati, libtard, globalist plan to destroy everything that has any form of ethics and morals, and to destroy churches, to destroy mosques, to destroy synagogues, to destroy political parties, because in the end they want simply the control of their supreme leader, like in the communist tradition, which is in this case, we have still President Xi Jinping, but in 10 years from now, we might not even have President Xi Jinping, because China is going to give everything to the artificial intelligence. And then you're going to see this society ruled by robocops, by cyborgs, by a nightmare. I mean, already when you see the publicity of 5G that is being done in China, it's not the kind of publicity we get here for 5G. Did you see the publicity for 5G in China, John? It's hilarious. You should see it. It's actually, they are publicizing the fact.
It's not working properly. It's like a...
No, but they made the publicity with the police chasing a guy and showing how effective is 5G with their own 5G glasses, which the police has, in finding the criminals and identifying everybody with facial recognition. And for the Chinese, this is an advantage and should be, wow, it's a great thing. So, I mean, the Chinese have a really sick and twisted vision of life. And when I saw in the last few days that half of China is actually underwater, and that they're having more and more plagues in their society, well, I think that God and the wrath of God has just started with China.
Yeah, swarms of locusts. I mean, geez, the world is definitely going through some changes.
And then, of course, we have the swine flu, the bubonic plague, another mystery sickness from Kazakhstan, and we Kyrgyzstan, whatever. And we still have really COVID-19, but these people are already ready to unleash on us more. They seem to really love us, John. They want to offer us more of China. Let's embrace this globalism and Chinese globalism.
I think I could sum it up. Bill Gates is not your friend. But that being said, it's so great, Leo, and
thank you so much for having me on. And I'm going to actually, I have been very busy with my work, but in the next couple of weeks or so, I will love to have you on also on the Leo Zagami show.
We'll do a whole back and forth. I always love talking to you, my brother.
And also try to establish more this channel. It takes time, of course, patience, my friend, because it seems like growing channels which touch on these subjects these days is almost impossible. I mean, there is people that methodically, probably from the Secret Service, I don't know what entity, goes on channels like mine and takes off hundreds of members every day. Yeah. So then, there is people who have themselves, and then they have to be
I started a thread on Twitter, the Crown Gate thread. I got 1.5 million views over a period of 3 weeks, and then it dropped down to a trickle. I mean, now, it's just they're really trying to control the narrative. They can't shut down the internet because they run all their stuff on the internet, so they can't really shut it down. So it's really kind of funny in a way. But that being said, I have to run. I know you have to run, but that just keeps
thank you so much.
And continuing our next conversation.
Absolutely, and keep on the great work. And for those who are interested, tune in on my shows, also on my YouTube channel, and leozagami.com for all the latest articles.
Absolutely. Take care, my friend.
God bless.